Hey guys, Storm here. So the goal is to determine how to pick adjuncts and when to add them. Mead is honey wine. I mean, we've got honey, we're going to ferment it. That's the complicated part, right? Where it gets interesting is then when you pick what to add to it. Do you want to add fruit? That's my go-to. Almost everything that I do at this point is either a traditional or has fruit. I need to get a little bit more back into metheglins because they're amazing. I haven't done them like in 18 months. Need to go make a metheglin that imitates Bombay. It's one of my favorites. So add that one to the brewing list. But you've got all these adjuncts and you've got spices, you've got herbs, you've got fruits, you've got hot peppers, you've got all kinds of weird things. I mean, you can make lactamels, you can make let's not talk about that fish meat. That was something that is going to be Reddit history that we never need to return to. Um, and how do you pick it and when do you put it in? So you've got all these different adjuncts and you say, how do I pick? Oh, the first step is you take it and you eat it. This is an apricot. It's pretty tasty. It's dried, so the flavor is a little stronger. And it's good. I could go eat this and enjoy it as it is. So do you have one per gallon? Obviously not. Do you have 5,000 per gallon? That's the other end of the spectrum. So do you want to do like a no water apricot mead? You really can't with a dried apricot because they're going to suck up any water or not impart any. So you have to figure out a way to add it or to use whole undried apricots, and it's very complicated. Let me finish here. So I have a apricot bochet going where I added 2 pounds of apricot per gallon in secondary, and there's a little bit of rose and some other adjuncts in there, and I'm super happy with where that turned out. So I go eat this fruit. I say it's got a strong flavor, it's got some sweetness, and it's not going to impart a lot of water. Since it's not imparting water, you want to choose to say, okay, is it going in primary or secondary? And secondary is where I went with this one. So I took a little bit of water, added it to this fruit, put in Lalzyme EXV, which did a good job of breaking down the fruit, and then added this slurry, like it kind of turns into a slime, which is the enzyme doing its thing. Added that all in, and it's great. The apricot flavor is very forward. You've got this caramelized honey note from this melter honey that I caramelized, and then apricot right there. A little bit of rose to get some tannin and some floral aromatics, and it's just perfect. So that's a simple adjunct. I mean, we all know how to do berries. I mean, berries you want to put in as much as you can afford, and it just tastes better and stronger, and it smells better and everything. You do a no water with blueberries, and it's better than 4 pounds per gallon with blueberries. That's an opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but it's really, really good. And if it's sweeter, you've got the acidity of the blueberries, you've got the tannins of it, and it all balances the final sweetness. And that's the way I like to do it is more flavor, more sweetness, more tannins, and make something that's a high ABV. In my case, you don't have to. That you can just enjoy a small glass of and really spend the time to enjoy all the flavors that it presents. Something a little stronger. Might not be able to see this. Ah, there you go. This is a grain of paradise. It's kind of like a peppery little thing. It goes great with juniper. So one grain here, and it's strong. Um, Peppery, earthy, spicy. I mean, it's got some heat to it, like kind of like a Szechuan pepper sort of thing, but a very different flavor to it. And so you have to figure out how much you want to put in a batch. So do you need between 1 grain and a pound of grains? And the answer is between the two again. So some things to consider is, do you grind it? If you've gone and mashed up something with a hard skin to it that's a spice, it will definitely impart more flavor sooner. So me, when I've gone and used this, I've gone and crushed it. and made a tea because I was nervous about how much earthiness and spice I wanted. Then I added it to my batch. Worked out pretty good, and I ended up using about a tablespoon per gallon. Notice I was able to eat this and enjoy it in a small quantity. It wasn't super super spicy, and it wasn't a overpowering flavor. But it was pungent. So you don't want to add, by the quarter cup to a batch. But a mortar and pestle, you put it in a hop sack or something similar to that, and yeah, then you taste the mead, pull it when it's right. One thing I've noticed with that particular spice is you can add a lot of tannins very, very quickly because it's like this earthy, nutty spice to it, and that may overpower other flavors. If you're doing a metheglin, it's perfect. If you're doing a blackcurrant melomel, like I was doing, it was very important to pull it when the flavor was a strong backbone to it. So another tasting thing. This is tea. Rooibos. Fuck, I can't remember how to pronounce it. It's a tea that kind of tastes like green tea and berries. So it's mild. This is something that's firmly in the quarter cup per gallon, in my opinion, range. I think you could go and add up to a cup per gallon if you wanted a tea forward mead, but like a quarter cup is probably where I'd be starting, especially if I was looking to add some body and some earthiness to otherwise strong mead. Like let's say raspberry. I think raspberry would go very well. Raspberry, a little bit of tannins, finish it pretty sweet, and yeah, I think that would do a pretty good job. And so, what does it pair with? Well, I got this red flavor out of it, kind of like this berry earthiness. So, lemons, sure, that could complement it. Limes, no. It's like a different kind of flavor to it. So, one thing you can do to try to figure out, hey, does this go together? Is just sit here and eat the stuff. You have one and then have the other. If it tastes weird in your mouth, it's not the right thing to go forward with. You're gonna put 24 months of time into a mead. Spend the time to try some of the adjuncts, eat them, and figure out where you want to go with it. It's very easy to go and play imagination and say, "Hey, oh, this sounds great and that sounds great. And oh, I love where this is going to go with it," and all up in your head, and circumvent all of that just for a second and try the actual stuff. Smell it, make a tea out of it, smell it again, taste it a couple of different ways, and you can really figure out what you're going to do with something very logically. And it doesn't need to be a science. Just taste it and see if you like it. um, Different ways to extract flavors will create different things, but at the end of the day, a grapefruit melomel is going to taste like a grapefruit melomel. If you added the zest, if you added the skin, if you added all this other stuff, it's just going to change how it is, but not what it is. The base flavors are always going to be there. And the big thing to want to play with is intensity. Speaking of the grapefruit melomel, do you want to use the juice? Do you want to use the zest? Do you want to use the pith? Probably not the pith, since grapefruit is a particularly bitter fruit. But like an orange, sure, use a little bit of the pith. If you're doing like 30 oranges in a 5-gallon batch, put the pith of one orange in there and the zest of half of them. And then keep the other half of the zest for another batch later. It'd go great with any other melomel, just to kind of enhance the fruity flavor. So this grapefruit mead, what else do you put in there? Do you want it to be just grapefruit? Or do you pick a pairing list that goes with it? What else goes with grapefruit? Spice actually goes great with grapefruit. Other things could be herbal, savory. I'm not a big fan of savory and mead, but really, really strong flavors can go well with a little bit of savory going on. Grapefruit and rosemary is a super iconic cocktail. And you can spend some time working with that in a mead if you feel like. The last thing I'm gonna eat on stream. This is a super hot for my garden. I've had it frozen in the freezer for a little while, and I made some salsa with these recently. There's some good peppers. Wow. So I'm still here in one piece. Wow. So if you have a pepper and want to say how much heat does this thing have? How much can you handle, and where do you want it to be? Gonna have the hiccups. That is a 1 pepper per gallon heat. Maybe 1 pepper per 2 gallons. Oh, starting to fade now though. So something that's super hot like that, obviously it's a bad ride for me. I don't want to be having a ton of that in my meat. So that's something that I want to either be making a tincture of and adding afterwards, or to be doing a grams per gallon addition. In my last batch, if you see right behind me there, that's a mango habanero. I made 5 different teas. There was a tea from a dried jalapeno that was smoked. I had a chipotle, a Jamaican red hot, a habanero, and I was getting confused, and a Carolina Reaper. And I did tasting trials of all of them. I reserved some of the must of the batch, diluted it by 50%, and then added grain alcohol to increase the ABV to about 12%. This makes a faux mead that I can taste with. And then I do trials side by side. I've got a vial of tea and a vial of mead. Take a syringe, pull one, take a syringe, pull the other. And so, like the habanero, 1 part to 6, great flavor to it. Mango habanero, super iconic. And I was very, very, very happy with how that turned out. The jalapeno, where it got to a heat that I wanted it to be, it was grassy. The chipotle pepper, it kind of tasted like Mexican sauce and mango. It wasn't bad. You could make something around it, but I wasn't looking to make a chutney. I wanted a hot mead. It kind of had like this red flavor to it that was a little bit more than what I was looking for. So then you go on to the hotter peppers. The habanero was definitely middle of the two hots. The Jamaican Reds had this wonderful earthy flavor to it, whereas the habanero is a little sweeter and kind of like fruity. Um, Me and the guy that I was tasting this with, my uncle of mine, who wanted to do some brewing with me, we could have gone and picked either one of those and been very, very happy with them. Great, great peppers. And then you go to the super hot. This Reaper, you say, okay, what are you going to mix this with? And that one was mixed 12 to 1, so half the concentration of the habanero. And it was like this neutral heat. So it was the same level of spice between one and the other with half the pepper, which makes sense because one's a million Scoville and the other one's 500,000. And, so it's what do you want with it? And this little bit of a fruity edge just really made the habanero great. But let's say you already had that fruity flavor in it. And like mango's great, but it's like not super fruity. It's more sweet and tropical. But let's say you've got this fruity peach. That peach may go perfect with a super hot at a higher dilution than something that's the same heat because you've got more of it. And that's that whole tasting thing where you're trying to figure out how much do you want, where are you getting it from? And again, it comes back down to eat your shit, even if it hurts for a few minutes, and then figure out where you want to go with it. That one, I think, could go really well with like some caramelized honey, or maybe like a blueberry. I think that could go Oh God, I'm tearing up. Go super well with. So you've got how much you're adding and your intensity. So what are the other things you're looking for? You've got primary and secondary. Well, when do you add it? A lot of people say that primary loses a lot of fruit flavor, and that's not really true. Um, you get less fruit bang for your buck if you want to think about just what the fruit flavor tastes like. And like, let's say you've got a blueberry and you've got 2 pounds of blueberry, and that's all you've got. Well, okay, fine. Put all that blueberry in secondary. It's going to be fine. In primary, you get like this more fermented taste to it. It's more like a wine and less like a sangria. And that's a very important note. Which do you want to make? Do you want to make wine or fruit punch? Both are very, very fucking tasty. And you got to figure out which one you want. Generally speaking, my high ABV stuff, wine. My low ABV stuff, sangria. And so when you go and add fruit, you dilute the must. Let's say fruit makes about 5% alcohol by volume. Number out of the hat, it's around there. Um, and if you've got a 18% wine and you put 4 pounds of fruit in it, well, guess what? Now you don't have 18% wine anymore. So if you've got the fruit that goes in different places and different strengths of it, then well, what happens if you do both? This is kind of a harmony of both worlds. If you're doing a no water melomel, you probably don't need to do both. But if you want to get the most out of 8 pounds per gallon of raspberries, we'll do 4 pounds in primary and 4 pounds in secondary, and you are going to get a super, super intense flavor with still like this rich tannic flavor of the fruit skins that have been included in everything. It gives it some bodies, the stuff that gives it just a lot of complexity to the flavor of it. That stuff that you only added in secondary, 8 pounds per gallon, you're going to dilute your mead really bad, and the flavor is going to be very uh, one dimension. Maybe that's the one dimension that you want. You can build around it, but firm belief in heavy fruit goes in the beginning, light fruit goes in the end. There are some fruits that do better with a lot of fruit. Think anything that is your squishy iconic berry. So cherries, blackberries, blueberries, not currants. Currants are super tannic. They've got strong, strong flavor of it. You don't need as much of them. So all these other fruits that you just wanted to like shovel into primary and do a no water melomel, well, black currant, it still goes in primary if you feel like, because it's got this wonderful tannin and complexity to it. But maybe you only need 3 pounds per gallon. It's really easy to overwhelm your honey with really, really strong fruit. So that's the other balance you want to get is how much do you want your honey and how much do you want your fruit to show through. You've got your fruit, you've got when you're adding it, you've got the intensity of your adjuncts, and all these different things that are come together here. And then you say, okay, well, now we know how much to add, when to add it, but what goes together. So if you think in your head, what sounds good together, sometimes that's right. Um, Raspberry chocolate. If you haven't, do it. It's good. 6 pounds per gallon raspberries, and then like 1 pound per 5 gallons of cocoa nibs. You ain't get one. It's ready. In secondary, brilliant, absolutely delicious. And that's an iconic flavor. Raspberries and chocolate. Go to some Valentine's thing. It's February, I suppose, and you're gonna be able to find a chocolate covered raspberry somewhere. I hope, or at least a raspberry syrup chocolate candy somewhere, or cherries. You know, cherries and vanilla. These are super iconic flavors that go well together because you've heard about it. They work together for a reason. Um, but there's other places to go find this stuff. You can look up flavor pairing charts and all this other stuff, and it's great places to draw some baselines from. And this is going to sound really, really stupid, but I have found a vape chart, and I don't vape, but like these vape flavor nerds have put together a really, really, really great pairing list. And like I'm looking at it here, and if you go and just pick two flavors at random, like let's say ginger and peach. Oh, I went to ginger, went up three, and yeah, ginger and peach sounds great. Another one, blackberry lemon. Yep, blackberry lemon or blackberry orange zest, match made in heaven. Apricot, caramel. I've got one of those going. Pomegranate and apple. Haven't done that one myself, but like if you made a sizer, and you should be using all juice because sizers are just best done that way. And then added 2 pounds per gallon of pomegranate pips in secondary. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And I'll go link this chart. So just for Russian roulette's sake, let's think up one of the next meads I'm gonna make. And I got 29 and 4. So on my chart, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 29. Pineapple. No, there's no four, so we'll go with the last one on the list. Caramel. So how would you go about a pineapple caramel? I'd say make a boucher. Yeah. And then maybe you go with some Belgian candy syrup in secondary. That's what I'm drinking right here. So I took melter honey. I didn't caramelize the melter at all because I'm super happy with my melter as it was, and put it in a sizer and just let that rip. And then added some oak and Belgian mild and Belgian dark hard candies that I melted in a pot. Not to toot my own horn, I think I'm going to win a medal for that one at a competition going forward here somewhere. It is definitely one of the top 10 meads that I've ever made, and I've been at this for like 12 to 15 years or some shit, like 22. Yeah, 13 years at this point. Um, so how do you translate that into pineapple? So pineapple is a tough fruit to ferment. You got to be good with your yeast on it. What works with it and what doesn't can be a little weird. I've always had really good luck with 118. Pineapple has bromelain, I believe that's how you say it, in it, and that is a digestive enzyme that does weird things. If you eat pineapple and you kind of feel like your gums are tingly, it's because the pineapple that you're eating is eating you back. So you want to get some enzymes in there. You don't want to use too much per gallon of it. Have that break down a little bit. So let's say 4 pounds per gallon. Pineapple is pretty intense flavor, pretty sweet. You don't need to do a no water pineapple. I mean, props to you, you can, but you don't need to get good pineapple flavor. So you ferment that with some melter honey. Maybe if you really want to get wild and crazy, caramelize those pineapple rings just on the grill with some applewood if you wanted to go like smoke it or something, or broil it on top of a applewood slice. So caramel, uh I would probably not back sweeten with Belgian candy syrup again. It was very, very tasty, but I don't think it was more cost effective or tastier than caramelized honey. And we make mead, so fuck candy syrup. Let's go make our own stuff. Um, Maybe I would go pick a different honey to go along with that. I think maybe like a really light toast on an orange blossom honey could go really great with pineapple. And again, I'm just picking stuff out of the hat here. You know, what goes well together? We've got some citrus and you've got fruit. And it keeps it simple. You don't want to have competing flavors. So you want to pick two things and maybe a supporting guy. So I love putting hot peppers in things, but I've already got pineapple, the complexity of caramel, which runs a whole different gamut of things, and then probably this one's going to do well with oak in secondary. So you've got everything. You don't want to muddle it. I'm not going to go put, you know, grains of paradise in there because it's too much going on. I'm going to mute the flavors of the other stuff that I've got going. And you want to be able to take your drink and say, I smell apples, I taste oak, I've got some smoky notes into it, and be able to pick out each one of those flavors. So as a rookie or even experienced brewer, it's really easy to say, "Oh, let's add another vial into this pot," and get way too much going on. So always pare it down, quality ingredients, add more of them. Um, especially if it's something that you enjoy eating, not like this, add more of it. More blueberries. You're never going to have too much blueberries. You're never going to look at it and say, "Oh gosh, this stains my glass too bad. I don't like it." Um, it just doesn't work that way. We love the flavor intensity of fruit. So this is a good time to talk about teas and when stuff goes in secondary. So if you've got something like that grain of paradise, does it go in primary or does it go in secondary? Does a tea go in primary or does it go in secondary? This is a really complicated question. So spices don't do as well in primary if you want to maintain flavor intensity. But sometimes flavor intensity isn't the end all. Maybe you want to just have that earthy background, which does stay. So let's say you lose 33.248% of the flavor, adding something in primary versus secondary for a tea like adjunct. If you add 34% less in secondary, it's a different flavor than if you fermented it all the way through. The body will be a little bit more, you'll get a little bit more tannins, and then the flavor will be more muted. That is something that you can use if you want to. It's a little bit tough to really nail that in, and this is always why it's worth repeating a batch. So I have some batches that I'm like on Mark 4, Mark 5 of stuff, and it's like the same thing, but I've like just done really tiny changes to it to figure out, do I like it better this way? Do I like it better that way? And then I drink, if I can, a glass of each and say, what is stronger here? What do I remember it being different like? How has it aged? So a strong tea in primary is going to blow some flavor out of the airlock, but if you don't need to then go dilute your must by that, that can be a helpful characteristic. So my Viking's Blood is a cherry hibiscus metheglin, melomel, whatever. So essentially, I do a 1 gallon thing of hibiscus and throw that in my cherries and then add honey on it. So it's not no water, but it's pretty damn low. I think it's like 6 pounds of cherries per gallon, and it's just phenomenal. So if I wanted to go ferment that to my desired ABV, which in this case was 19.5%, with some staggered nutrient additions, or sorry, staggered sugar additions, and I wanted to go add any significant amount of tea in secondary, I'd drop my ABV down to like 16%, 14%, depending on how much I added. And I don't want that. So that's going to reduce the intensity of my cherries. It's going to reduce all this strong stuff. So I make a super, super strong tea, add it in primary, eat the losses on the flavor, and then have a more aromatic and flavorful product for it in the end. Could you go dry hop it for 3 days or 24 hours or something in secondary? Yes, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. Anything that is not a sugar contributing source can go either primary or secondary with very, very little defect, difference, anything. and it's just about how long you have your contacts times for, and then some slight nuance on tannin extraction, which honestly, it's balanceable. Don't sweat it. You're trying to just go and get what you want in a way that tastes right. So you want to make sure that your process is conducive for you being able to taste everything and then figure out where you want to go from there. Wow. Okay. So 41 minutes. This is longer than I was expecting at this point. So I got to do some tastings and give some feedback on some other stuff. So current favorite mead, that was 12 ounces of oak in secondary for a brief period of time. And I love the intensity of that. The oak is mellowing. I was a little worried I'd overdone it. Right after I yanked the oak in secondary, it's sitting in a bulk age right now. Oh, was sitting in a bulk age. I bottled everything. Um, and so the oak is muting as it ages here. It's been about a month now that I've been drinking this particular one. I'm gonna have a hard time keeping my hands off of it. And the apple character is pretty good. I think the apple will increase as time goes on. That's kind of the nature of a sizer. And what this was, it was my local apple orchard. I've got a great relationship with this group. They do all their presses. You don't know exactly what varietal apples are in it, but they press it and you pick it up that day because that shit's gonna ferment, whether you want it to or not. And I threw it in a bucket and was going off like just an absolute rocket afterwards. That was all with melter honey. Started that at 1.150 and it fermented down mostly dry. Back sweetened it to, you'll see there. Hit some buttons. 1.062 on my phone, and so that's a sweet meat. Very sweet. Uh, it's a solid 18% alcohol by volume, so that's about where I like it to be. I could pick any number between like oh 03 something and there and be pretty happy with it. It's very easy to add more and more sugar to this and just, you know, see where it makes the apple flavors come out the strongest. This one, this one is a mead challenge. Wow. This is not a very old mead. This is the you can see it pretty good. The clarity is pretty much crystal clear, and it's 3 months old. It is a 18% cranberry mead. Um, this also was apple juice. We added, let's see, it was 4 pounds of cranberries per gallon, apple juice to fill, and then to a specific gravity of 1.144 apparent. This ended up being, I think it might be top 3 meads that I've ever made, and I don't say that very lightly. I made this with a buddy, locally. I don't know as much about some of the adjuncts as I would like to, some of the magic powders, some of the specific yeasts. I mean, I have this niche where, like, I just take Lavin 1118 and run off with it, and then add gobs of fruit, and then balance things well, taste stuff, really dial in where I like it to be. And this one was a little different. It's a cranberry mead with lots of real cranberry in primary, and you need to go balance that. This does not taste sweet. I've given it to people and they thought it was, like I described, hey, here's what sweet is. Here's another mead that's, you know, very dry. Here's another mead that is very sweet. And they said, oh, this is a dry mead. And, it'll be the sweetest one I've handed them at that day. And said, what, 106, 1065, somewhere in that ballpark. And this particular glass, I've actually gone and put a little bit of maple syrup in because that's what the recipe was supposed to call for. And it's good, but I think it detracts from the other two flavors. The apple and the cranberry are so fun to taste when they blend with that honey, and I wouldn't want to change that. It is simple when you have just two strong adjuncts and you say, here is my fruit, here is my spice or my other fruit, and here is a happy marriage with honey. And that's how you build a recipe. Here's how you build it. Here's how you pick it. It's what kind of intensity do you want? What combos of flavors do you need? And go from there. You got to taste it and you got to try it and then you got to try it again if it wasn't right the first time around.